محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Let's remember the following marhumin who passed away in the last 5 days. Marhum Shabir, Marhuma Masuma bint Imam Hussein Zaramsi, and Marhuma Sayyida Fatima bint Hussein Ali Zaidi. Let's remember all the marhumin with one Surah Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفي نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في قرآنه المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإني خفت الموالي من ورائي وكانت امرأتي آخرا فهب لي من لدنك وليا يرثني ويرث من آل يعقوب واجعله ربي رضيا. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
We have gathered tonight to express our condolences to our living Imam, Hazrat Majlis, Ajjallahu Ta'ala.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The anniversary, on the death anniversary of Sayyida Fatima Shahadat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
One of these subjects or issues that has been subjected to a lot of arguments within the walls of the homes or within courtrooms is the subject of inheritance. Inheritance has played an important role in all our lives. And a lot of times, because of inheritance, there has been a lot of arguments within families. For example, which son will take over which furniture, or which house, or which car, or which uncle will claim what kind of assets that the certain person who passed away leaves behind. And hence, when we look at this subject of inheritance, we realize that we ourselves are within a system of inheritance, because someday when we will die, our assets will be inherited by our children, or when our parents will die, then we would be inheriting their assets. And hence, when we look at this subject of inheritance, we need to understand what it means. And we need to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran has made the subject of inheritance very, very clearly. And where do we find this? We find this in Surah Nisa, ayat number 11, 12, and 176, where Allah says about the portions that the females get, the portion that the male get, and so on and so forth. And when we, it is our duty on all Muslims, believers, to understand what is the importance of inheritance. Why? Because when we look at these verses, sometimes we will not be able to understand it either because of the lack of Islamic history, the knowledge in Islamic history of what happened in Islamic history, or because we find the subject boring. Because when we look at these ayahs, we see, what do we see? We see two things. We see people say, when we see the Holy Prophet, or rather in the Holy Quran, it has been mentioned that some of them receive 1/8. For example, the mother receives 1/8, the wife receives 1/6. The wife receives 1/8, the mother receives 1/6, the husband receives half. In some areas, the female receives one portion while the male receives two portions of the female, and so on and so forth. So if we do not understand and we see so many fractions, we either get boring, we don't understand, or we forget about it, and then we forget about it. but it is incumbent upon all of us that we understand it. Why? Because we need to maintain a unified system of inheritance. Why? Because tomorrow our children will ask us, our grandchildren will ask us to explain us about inheritance. Hence, we must have full knowledge about inheritance. We see that inheritance has played a lot of significant role in the people's lives. For example, when you see the media and the TVs, or read newspapers, you will sometimes see that a 19-year-old, 19-year-old marrying a 91-year-old man, and you wonder why. But then when you see that the old man has got about $100 million in his account, then you know why. And hence we see that we must understand that inheritance is something that we must always know what is the meaning about. And when we want to examine what inheritance means or understand what inheritance is all about, we need to see how the word inheritance has been used in history. Like any other word, there are some words which are used differently in different times. So likewise, the word inheritance has been used in history and now in many ways. For example, in today's life, we use inheritance in many ways. For example, we must be hearing that this person has inherited the looks of his father, or the hair color of his mother, or the height of his father, and so on and so forth. So the key word here is that something is being passed on from one generation to the other. That is one area of inheritance that we see is being utilized in our life today. The second area that we realize or see the word inheritance being used is inheritance in knowledge. Have you heard that this person has inherited the knowledge of his father? Now here we need to clarify, because knowledge cannot be inherited. Knowledge is something that is either taught to somebody or inspired to somebody. It is not inherited. And then we see a third area of the word inheritance being used in today's life is when we see that somebody has inherited the religion of his father. As we see in some of the religions, they say that you need to be born in that religion to inherit, to be the follower of that religion. I would not want to mention the name right now, but I will go straight away to Islam and what Islam says. What does Islam say? In Islam, you do not inherit the religion when you're born. The fitrat is there. Because when you're born, your parents will recite Adhan, Iqamah on your ear, and then when they raise you in the way it's supposed to be, Islamic way. The fitrat is there. But when do we attain this? When does the Islam come into place? When does religion come? It comes when you proclaim the Shahadat. You must understand that when we want to accept Islam, we need to understand the usul, because Islam has got the usul and the furu. The usul are the fundamental basics. It is applicable upon all. There is no arguments about it. Tawheed, Adalat, Nubuwwat, Imamat, and Qiyamat. And when it comes to the furu, are the deeds and the amals that we need to perform as a believer. The only difference is that, depending on which marja taqlid you follow, some laws may differ from one marja to another. However, usul and furu must be followed in order to be a Muslim, in order to follow Islam and be regarded as a Muslim. And then yet we see the fourth area where the word inheritance has been used is when we see somebody saying he has inherited the religiosity of his father or mother. Religiosity, I mean how religious a person is. Again here, religiosity is not something that can be inherited. Because a person who attains religiosity or has become religious is because he has to go to extents of research, of readings, probably attend certain seminaries and acquire that knowledge and ilm, and that's where he becomes a religious person. For example, when you look at the stories from the Holy Quran about Prophet Adam, about Prophet Nuh, they were prophets, they were scholars, they were all religious of course, because they were sent out by Allah. But what happened to their children? Their children, as you know, one of the children of Prophet Nuh, one of the children of Prophet Adam, they were not as religious as their father. In fact, they were against the principles of what the father had come down and taught. And hence we see that religiosity cannot be inherited. However, this word is still utilized in our area. So when we look at the word inheritance in Arabic, the meaning is miras. Yeah, miras. Miras, when we look at the Arabic language, miras has always been associated with wealth being passed on from a generation to another. Whenever miras is used in the Arabic language, it is talking about wealth being passed on from one generation to the other. Now, if you want to know how the word inheritance was used before in history. So we go first to the time before the Holy Prophet. Now, when we look at history and how the word inheritance was, or rather how the subject of inheritance was taken by the people, you'll be amazed. Inheritance, first of all, there was no regard for inheritance towards females. That was number one, during the times of Jahiliyyah. females would not inherit anything. And when we were to question them, the answer would be because they do not have any military involvement. Hence, they do not deserve to have any inheritance. But something that is more amazing, or very disturbing rather, is that not only were the females not receiving an inheritance, but they had become the subject of inheritance. If you read the Safavid Empire, or even during the time of the before the Holy Prophet, during the time of Jahiliyyah, a woman, a lady, can actually be the subject of inheritance, which means she does not inherit, she is the one who is being inherited. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, for example, when a man would die, he would say to his son, or before he dies, he would say to his son that after I die, my wives will now be your wives. The son would inherit the father's wives. They would have more than one wife. So all those wives would become the son's wife. Why? And then what would the father say? That if you want to keep them, you keep them as your wives. Else you can sell them. Because at that time in the period of Jahiliyyah, females were only a means of creating a generation, and that's it. There was no military involvement, and hence the subject of inheritance was never ever used towards the females. Now when we look at the times, so we're coming to the time of the Holy Prophet, what do we see? The same thing, the inheritance towards females was not regarded. And we hear that from where? From the story of Hassan bin Sabit. Hassan bin Sabit was the voice of Arabia, very famous, and lived during the time of the Prophet. When he passed away, he left behind a wife and daughters. So what happened at that time was that the cousins came and took away all the wealth. So the wife of Hassan bin Sabit came to the Prophet and said, in Islam, isn't there anything that when the man passes away, the woman and the wife and the daughters would not have anything to live upon? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals Surah Nisa, ayat number 7. What does he say? He says, for man is a share of what the parents or close relatives leave behind, and for the woman is a share of what the parents leave behind or the close relatives leave behind. Which means Allah declared it there and then. That male have their rights, women have their rights. And that came to an answer to Hassan bin Sabit's wife. Now, Rasulullah asked the cousins that why is it that you take all the wealth and not give it to the wife? And the answer was the same thing as the period of Jahiliyyah, because there is no military involvement. So always we see that during the time of the Prophet, before the Prophet, there was so much Jahiliyyah that was the extent to which they went. But it did not only extend to that. It did not only go to that extent. It went to a further extent that when people used to adopt children, in times of inheritance, they would give their adopted son rather than their own daughter. Their adopted son would get the inheritance, but their daughter, their own real daughter, would not get any inheritance. That is the kind of Jahiliyyah that they were, and about the subject of inheritance that they had. The ayat that I quoted earlier is the ayat of Surah Maryam, in Surah Maryam, verse number 5, in which is a story about the prayer of Zakaria. And when we look at the ayat and we understand the meaning, anybody who understands the meaning of this ayat will understand further. What is the story all about? As we all know, Zakaria, Prophet Zakaria, he was the guardian of Maryam, the mother of Isa. And he used to guard Maryam, and there was a time when he had reached the age of 90, and he saw a miracle with Maryam, where we see that she used to eat from fruits that used to yield summer fruits in the time of winter, winter fruits in the time of summer. Prophet Zakaria, at that age, this is also one thing that we learn when we read this first verse of the dua of Prophet Zakaria, or rather this dua that he recited. He said, Zakaria, although being at that age of 90, he did not despair of Allah's mercy. He always regarded that Allah is always merciful. Sometimes in life we come to a point where when we see certain things happen, we be like, you forget that there's somebody who's merciful looking on top, and he's seeing what is best for you. Sometimes we say, oh, it's not my time anymore, and that kind of thing. So we should always make sure that we should never despair Allah's mercy. We should never forget that Allah is mercy. Why? Because the second biggest sin after shirk is despair. Not any other, not zina, not others. It is despair. When you disregard Allah's mercy, is a very large sin. So what is the ayat say? The ayat, this is the dua from Hazrat Zakaria when he's praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, وَإِنِّي خِفْتُ الْمَوَالِيَّ مِنْ وَرَائِي. He says, I am worried about the mawali, his cousins. He's referring to the relatives. And he continues to say, وَكَانَتِ امْرَأَتِي عَاقِرًا. My wife is barren. فَهَبْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا. So give me a heir. Give me somebody who can inherit. Inherit what? يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ. Inherit from me and from the family of Al Yaqub. وَاجْعَلْ رَبِّ الرَّزِيًّا. And make him the one that you will be pleased with. This is the dua that Hazrat Zakaria at the age of 90 is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now let us examine what this verse means. He's asking Allah to give him somebody, to give him a heir, which means he's talking about a son who can inherit. Now what is it that he wants to inherit? Is it prophethood? Is it knowledge? Or is it wealth? Some of the schools of thought say that it is prophethood, while some say it is knowledge. But we, the Shia and Ahlul Bayt, reject the first two and say it is wealth. Why? Number one, because we get the answers from the verse itself. He says that I'm worried of the cousins and my wife is barren, so give me a heir. If he's worried about the cousins, what will the cousins take? The cousins cannot take prophethood. The cousins cannot take knowledge. Cousins are after something that is not prophethood or knowledge, and hence wealth. Where do we else reject that it was not prophet? In the last verse he says, وَاجْعَلْهُ رَبِّ الرَّزِيًّا, and make him to be pleased, make him that you will be pleased with him. Allah, when he sends a prophet, he is already pleased with that person. That is why he sends a prophet. The prophet does not have to do something, then Allah is pleased with him. And hence here we defend that it was something, it was wealth. It was wealth that the Mawali, the cousins of Zakaria were after. And then of course we read the verses that follow, that Hazrat Zakaria, then Allah says that we will give you the glad tidings, and they gave him the son, which was the first time that was given the name John. And hence we see that we always understand, with this verse we always understand that the holy prophets, or rather the prophets, always had an inheritance. They always inherited. They inherited from somebody, or they left something behind. In history, in the Holy Quran, is very clear that the prophets always left something behind to be inherited by their descendants. Now, let us take ourselves to Medina and inside the mosque. Here we are after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Janabi Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Comes and now asks for the land of Father, because we know that it was the first caliph that who took away the property of Janabi Fatima, which was the land of Father. So, Hazrat Fatima, Janabi Fatima comes to the mosque and asks back the property of Father. What is the answer from the first caliph? He says that we have heard from the Prophet that the Holy Prophet does not leave behind any inheritance. Whatever that remains is for charity. This is the hadith that we hear, as what the first caliph says, that the Prophet said. Now, what did he ask? He said that, can you bring me witness that this is your land? Now, it's an irony here, because when in law we learn, those who are studying law or involvement in the commercial profession, you will come across this something known as possession indicates ownership, which means if I have a pen in my hand, legally it is mine. Now, if you say that no, this is not mine, I have to ask you, or the judge will ask you, can you please prove it that this is not yours? Then you probably have to present a receipt or something that this is not his pen, it's not my pen, it is your pen. But look at what is happening in the mosque. Here, the judge is asking, because the property belonged to Janabi Fatima, which was gifted by the Prophet, which was the property of Father, which was the property that he received as fay, as in the property that he received without having to raise a sword. Here, the judge is asking the person who owns the land that please give me evidence. Anyway, Janabi Fatima presents who? Ayman. What does the first caliph say? Oh no, we cannot accept the testimony of Ayman. Why? Because she's not an Arab. This is the answer that we get. Because she's not an Arab. Already there's a racial discrimination there. Then who does he bring? He brings Asma bint Umays. Again rejected. Why? Because then she married Jafar ibn Abi Talib. So the caliph said, this is your cousins, their relatives, so not counted. And then she brought who? Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
She brings Imam Ali to testify. And what do they say? Oh no, we do not accept him. We disassociate from him. Now you see, where does the dissociation start? We started disassociation from them. It was the first caliph who mentioned that no, we disassociate from him. We do not accept this. Because in Islam, you have to bring witness, you must bring two witnesses, two females, one male. So here, Ayman and Asma and Tumays, Imam Ali. But then all three were rejected. So, what did Janabi Fatima say? Then she brought, of course, the most evidence from the Holy Quran itself. She mentioned many verses from the Holy Quran. She started with which one? Wawarisa Sulaiman Dawood. The inheritor of Sulaiman, the inheritance, Dawood inherited from, Sulaiman inherited from Dawood. Yeah. What did Sulaiman inherit from Dawood? Did he inherit prophethood? No. Why? Because Sulaiman and Dawood were what? Prophets. Sulaiman was a prophet when his father was a prophet. Hence, he did not inherit prophethood. So what did he inherit? He inherited the assets. He inherited the palace. And where do we learn about the palace that he inherited? From the Holy Quran, the story of the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis. When the Prophet Sulaiman sent out the invitation to the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, inviting her to accept the religion of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought down, what did she first do? She sent gifts to dissuade him, to discourage him from asking her to come into Prophet Sulaiman's religion. But then the Prophet Sulaiman rejected the gifts. So she was surprised. Queen of Sheba's gifts are being rejected by somebody. So she set forth and came say, I want to go and visit this person, Sulaiman. So she comes to visit Prophet Sulaiman. At that time, Prophet Sulaiman asked one of the jinn, who can bring me her throne? So what did one of the jinn say? I can bring it within the blink of an eye. When Bilqis came down and entered the palace, she saw her throne. Now, what did Bilqis say? She knows it is her throne because she's the one that was controlling at her place. She comes and she tells, that looks like my throne. Of course, she's a royalty. She will not admit directly that, oh no, that is mine. She said, that looks like my throne. He was inside the palace of Nabi Sulaiman. When she entered the palace, what did she do? She lifted her dress. Why? Because she saw what was looking like a pane of water. A plane which had like water. So she lifted her dress to walk over it so that the dress does not get wet. But when she lifted and started to walk over the plane of water, she noticed that it was not wet. It was a very fine piece of glass. The water was only underneath it. Today we find in some of the malls or in some of the probably other palaces in the place of the world, we've seen this kind of architecture. This was there during the time of Prophet Sulaiman. She starts to walk and realizes that there's a very fine piece of glass. What did she say? She said, if the palace of Sulaiman is so great that it can deceive the eye of the Queen of Sheba, then how great is the Lord that created Sulaiman? And then she accepted the religion that Nabi Sulaiman was spreading. Then Janabi Fatima continues and she explains other verses. She talks about Surah Maryam, verse number 5, which I just recited earlier, about the prayer of Zakaria, again proving that prophets do leave behind for their descendants. Then she came to the Surah Nisa, ayat number 11. What does Allah say? The male inherits the portion of two females. Yeah, and so she tells the first clip. It is very clear in the Holy Quran. Yet you deny my share. Was the verse Surah Nisa, ayat number 11. Was this verse only revealed for you, but not for me? That is, only you can inherit and I cannot inherit? Or do you think that the religion of Muhammad is different from my religion? That is, I am a different faith and my father is a different faith? Or do you think that that you have more knowledge about inheritance than my father Muhammad and my cousin Ali? This is what Janabi Fatima is replying to the first caliph. Then she says, take it, but remember, on the day of Qiyamah, this same land will encounter you And she says what? That on that day, what pleasant, or rather what beautiful about it would be that the judge would be wonderful. Who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See how she concludes. See how she beautifully concludes. That when her land was usurped, was taken away, this is how she says, take it, but it will encounter you on the day of Qiyamah when only the wonderful Allah will be the judge. Now sometimes people will question, especially if maybe the ladies of the community, then why is it that the male get 2 portions of the female? Why do male get twice than what the female should get? Somebody came to Imam Jafar Sadiq and questioned him as to why. Why is it that the male gets 2 portions and the female only gets 1 portion? And the answer was very beautiful, something that we should always understand. He says firstly that the male, the man, is involved into military. Because at that time, to protect the Islam, to protect themselves, and of course, they were engaging into wars. In today's life here, we're talking about protection of the family, protection of giving the rights to the children, for example, education, so on and so forth. That is the first, meaning the duty of the father, the male. The second thing he says is that he is the breadwinner, he's the leader of the household, which means he is the person responsible for making sure that the family has enough food, enough clothing to wear, and a shelter to live under. And then the third thing he says is that it is the responsibility of the male to give mahar to the female. So hence when we look at this way, we see that we achieve an equivalence, a balance. How? Because what the male has, when you as a man, the leader of the household, has, you will give it or share it so that your whole family enjoys it. But whatever the woman earns is only her. She does not have the duty to give it to anybody. It's hers. And on top of that, she receives dowry from them. And as we see that by giving the 2 portions to the male and leaving 1 portion for the female, we do achieve eventually this equivalence or balance. This is the reply from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Coming back to the issue of father, there was one time during the time of the 6th Imam again, where there was somebody by the name of Fazl bin Hassan. Fazl bin Hassan was one of the companions of Imam Jafar Sadiq. And there was one time that, of course, we know Imam Jafar Sadiq had conducted various classes where he would teach. At that point, there was also somebody by the name of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa also was a very intelligent man. And there was one time that there was this class of students who were being attended by Abu Hanifa. So Fazl bin Hassan, remember, a companion of Imam Jafar Sadiq, tells his colleagues, his students, that okay, here we are presented before our teacher Abu Hanifa. I'm going to ask him one question and see what is his answer to it. What is his question? Now he plays a reverse psychology and he says it this way that, oh teacher, I had an argument with my brother and we were talking about who was superior, whether Ali ibn Abi Talib was superior or whether Abu Bakr and Umar was superior. And I think Abu Bakr and Umar was superior than Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Abu Hanifa of course says yes, that is right. He said, but how is it? How is it that they were superior? So what does Abu Hanifa say? Well, the Abu Bakr and Umar have been buried next to Rasulullah, in their house. Rasulullah passed away and he was buried inside his house. Abu Bakr and Umar have their bodies buried just next to Rasulullah. So he asked the question, but that property, that land, that house belonged to Rasulullah. So how did Abu Bakr and Umar receive the right to, or permission to bury, or to be buried there? What is their answer? That the Prophet had, and he quotes again from Holy Quran, saying that the wives received how much? 1/8. He said the Prophet, in the Holy Quran, the Prophet left behind this inheritance, 1/8 belongs to the wife. So the portion that belongs to Aisha and Hafsa, they were the wives of the Prophet and the daughters of Abu Bakr and Umar respectively, they claim that share of 1/8 and is buried there accordingly. So remember, again, Fazl bin Hassan is a companion of the Imam Jafar Sadiq. He is also intelligent. He asks then Abu Hanifa, if that is the case, then the Holy Prophet had left behind 9 wives. So 1/8, if it's 1/8 is a portion to the wives, 1/8 divided by 9 is what? 1/72. So hence only the head has the permission to be there. The rest of the body. This is the time. This is the reality, the fact, and we see the reality about inheritance and the truth about inheritance. Anyway, we continue and we see Ibn Abi al-Hadid. He is the one who wrote the commentary of Nahj al-Balagha. And what does he write there? He says that I asked my teacher. His teacher was Ali Farid. He writes there in the commentary that I asked my teacher that did really the property of father belong to Fatima binti Muhammad? And his teacher said that yes, it does belong. Then he writes that then why is it that Abu Bakr did not give it back? And if he said that it was charity, which means it belonged to the Ummah, the Muslim, then why did the Muslims return it to Fatima? Because they had heard all the during the time of the khutbah of my father, they had heard the khutbah. So why did the Muslims give it the property back? What is the answer from his teacher? He said, if the first caliph would have returned Fadak to Janab Fatima to Zahra, then he would also have to give back the caliphate to Imam Ali. Because that is what Janab Fatima would have given for. That is the answer. This is the comment of Ibn Hadid. These are the commentator of Shahadat Nahj al-Balagha. Anyway, we move on, and during the 7th Imam's time, there was the Abbasid Caliph. The Abbasid Caliph came to the 7th Imam and he asks him, then what is this fadak that you're doing? If it's yours, take it. We'll give it to you. And this is also, and this is the answer, the reply that Imam Qasim gives to the Abbasid Caliph of that time, which is also the same that Imam Raza then gave the answer, is that he says that you will never be able to give fadak to us. You will never be able to give to us. So the Caliph asked that, why is it that we will not be able to give fadak? And look at the reply he says, because he says fadak stretches all the way throughout the Islamic world. That is fadak, not just the piece outside Medina. And why does he say so? Because I remind you just to the part, or rather in the time of the khutbah of Janab Fatima Zahra. And there came a point where after giving the various verses of the Holy Quran, the first caliph realized that now he has been defeated. Because everybody had listened to that khutbah, and the first caliph was like, I think it is better we just give it back. So he wrote, he was the caliph of the time, he signed the deed and wanted to give it back to Janab Fatima Zahra. But who stopped him? The second caliph. Umar came and said, what are you doing? Don't you know that if you give this land back, then we would not have the wealth that we want from the date trees that were planted in the area of Fadak. We would need the wealth, what? To feed the army. To do what? To conquer the Islamic countries. And hence, it was that land of Fadak which fed the people, and then they conquered, or rather spread Islam throughout the Islamic world, of course, through their means. But that is where the use of Fadak was. So Fadak was not the end, it was just the beginning. And hence this hadith of Imam Qasim bin Aliza, that you would not be able to give Fadak, because Fadak stretches out throughout the Islamic countries. Now, please have one salawat ala Muhammad. So we came to the point where Umar comes and says that, asks Abu Bakr that no, we will not be returning the land of Fadak to Janab Fatima. What did he do? When we read the history books, it says that he tore the piece of paper and threw it on Janab Fatima. But we can still tolerate at what happened in the mosque. Why? Because Janab Fatima Zahra had given a nice single liner at the end of her khutbah saying that, take it for it will encounter you in the day of Qiyamah, when Allah, the wonderful judge, will be there. But what we cannot tolerate is what happened after the khutbah. What happened after they left the mosque and when she went. And when we read these verses, when we read this khutbah when we read this, what happened after the event of the mosque, the khutbah, it is really, really sad. I want to tell you, to start with, during the time of the 6th Imam, there was somebody by the name, there was a lady rather, who had come and was walking past during the city, and she fell and she hit the ground. When she hit the ground, she felt a pinch in her ribs. So when she felt a pinch in her ribs, she sent a curse on the killers of Janabi Fatima. So when she did that, the people, the rulers of that time, the army of that time who were spies around there, of the Bani Abbas, they took her and imprisoned her. So there were many other people around and watched that happening. So they came to the sixth Imam and told Imam that, look, one of the ladies who had done so and so, she cursed the killers of Janabi Fatima because she fell and hit her rib. She has been imprisoned. So can you please recite the dua so that she can be released from prison? So Imam Jafar Sadiq recited the dua and told the people that go, she will be released. But when she is released, then please bring her back. Please bring her to me. I want to ask her why she said that. She was released. She came to Imam Jafar Sadiq and she said, you called for me. What is it that Imam Jafar Sadiq asks her? And why is it that you said that? She said that when I fell down and when I hit the ground and I hurt my ribs, I remember the name that pinched the chest of Bibi Fatima Zahra. It is said that Imam Jafar Sadiq started to shed his tears. I take you back to Medina during that time. It is said that when the second caliph came towards the door, he said, I have come to seek the allegiance of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Fatima, a young woman, a young lady, what did she say? She said she will defend her husband. Imagine a young lady at the age of 18. She said, this is the house of the daughter of Rasulullah. Please go away. What does Umar reply? Umar says, he said, so what? And what did he do then? He said, he ordered a group of people to gather wood for fire. He gathered the people, he gathered the wood for fire, and he started to scream that, burn the house, burn the house. Janabi Fatima said, she raised her voice and said, O Father, O Prophet of Allah, after your departure, Ibn Khattab and Ibn Kuhafa have troubled us so much and has caused distress to me. When the people heard this, they started to weep. They started to weep, and because of that, they realized that they were on the wrong, so they left. But then there were still a few people, Umar and a few people remained behind. What did they do? Umar then asked to set the fire to the door. The wood that was placed at the door was set to fire and it caught fire. Eventually, the smoke that came from the fire entered the home of Janabi Fatima Zahra, and then the smoke filled up the house. It is said that Kunfus, one of the companions of Umar, put his hand inside the door and tried to open it. And when he tried to open it, Janabi Fatima held the door tightly. She held the door tightly with both her arms and prevented them from opening the door. And she said, I ask you, please, for the sake of Allah, please, for the sake of my father Rasulullah, please leave us alone and return to your homes. Then what happened? It is said that Umar then kicked the door. He kicked the door until it broke down. Janabi Fatima turned her womb away. She was pregnant. She had Janabi Mohsin inside. She turned her womb away from the door so that to protect it. But then when Umar kept on kicking the door, he crushed the door open. And it so happened that with great force, Janabi Fatima Zahra was between the door and the adjoining wall. She was so much in difficulty that it appeared that she would die right away. There was a nail on the door. There was a nail on the door. Her chest and her arms were stained with blood. So much blood that was flowing with great force. She fell on her face and came down to the ground. And this time the fire was still burning. She raised her voice again and asked and cried, Oh Father, O Rasulullah, look at what the people have done to your daughter. Oh Fiza, she called her maid. Oh Fiza, please come and help me. By Allah, they have killed the child in my womb. It is saying that when Umar entered the house, Allahu Akbar, narrators have described the incidents that happened after Umar entered the house, which is so graphic that only the people with... It is there in Hidayat al-Kubra. The detail is in there in Hidayat al-Kubra, written down if those who want to read it. But I'll just brief you to show you what atrocities Janabi Fatima Zahra faced after the khutbah. Umar ordered Kunfus to whip Janabi Fatima and he engaged into this hideous act so much with brutality surely say, it is said that Kulfur struck her face due to which her eyes were severely injured and started to bleed. One can surely say that this event was the primary cause of her martyrdom. When death approached Hazrat Fatima, Janabi Fatima, she asked Asma bint Umays to bring her some clothes. Asma bint Umays brought her some clothes. She changed into her clothes and she said, I'm going into the room. If within certain time, if I do not come out, then know that I have passed from this world. But if I come out, then I'm alive. But if I do not come out, if you do not hear from me, then know that I have left this world. Janabi Fatima Zahra enters the room, and when time comes, Asma bint Umays starts to knock the door. She calls out to Janabi Fatima Zahra. There is no answer. She knocks again the second time and calls out. Still there is no answer. The third time she knocks again, there is no answer. She remembered what Janabi Fatima Zahra said. She entered the room and she finds, when she lifts the veil of Janabi Fatima Zahra, she finds that Janabi Fatima Zahra is returned to the world, to Allah and to her father. When Hassan and Hussein come home, when Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein come home, they ask for her mother. What does Asma bint Umays say? Asma bint Umays says that go and eat your food. But what do the children say? They tell her, don't you know that we don't eat without our mother? Don't you know that we are not able to eat without our mother? Where is our mother? She takes them to the room. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein then sit there and they weep on Janabi Fatima Zahra. Imam Ali comes to the room. Imam Ali sees what is happening. When it is time to perform ghusl, Imam Ali brings the body and she starts to perform ghusl of Janabi Fatima. But what happens? When he's doing the ghusl of Janabi Fatima Zahra, he reaches a point on his ribs, and he stops. And he comes and he pulls back and he goes and sits down and starts and he puts his head down and starts to weep. Asma bint Umays comes and says, what happened? He says that I have just touched the broken rib of Janabi Fatima. He goes out to Abu Zar. He says, oh Abu Zar, please come and help me hold the body of Janabi Fatima Zahra. Abu Zar said, oh Ali ibn Abi Talib, you are the one who raised the door of Khaybar. Why can't you hold the body of Janabi Fatima Zahra? That is the agony that Imam Ali went through, that he would not be able to take it, he would not be able to contain it when he felt the broken ribs of Janabi Fatima Zahra. Then Janabi Fatima Zahra, when Imam Ali came, and Abu Zar, they carried the body of Janabi Fatima Zahra. On the left, Imam Hassan was there. On the right, Imam Hussein was there. Imam Hussein lied on the chest of his mother and started to weep and call for his mother. It is said that at that time, when he wept, he said, "Oh mother, this is your Hussein speaking. Please answer me. Please answer me." It is said that Janabi Fatima Zahra, she woke up, she embraced the children before that she passed on. But I want you to look at this point. That Imam Hussein at that point was on the chest of his mother. But now let us switch to Karbala. Let's switch on the deathbed of Imam Hussein. On the deathbed of Hussein, who was on the chest of Imam Hussein. It was he who sat on Imam Hussein's chest. Imagine the same Imam Hussein who was sitting on the chest of his mother. Today somebody else, the enemy is on his chest and wants to kill him. It is said that when Imam Sayyid Abidin was passing away, Imam Muhammad Baqir came and Imam Baqir came to his father. He saw his father and he saw his father starting to weep when Imam Muhammad Baqir slept on the chest of Imam Sayyid Abidin. And he asked his father that, why are you weeping? You will soon be with Rasulullah. You will soon be with your grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib. You will soon be with your uncle Hassan and your father Hussein. Then why is it that you weep? Imam Ali ibn Abidin answers to his son, oh my son, today you are lying on your father's chest, but you do not know that who was lying on my father's chest when he was on the plains of Karbala. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.